everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Daisy, and I'm making YouTube videos about using English as a second language for people like me and you. Today I'll be chatting with a very good friend of mine, Dat Teo, who's a young Vietnamese educator and entrepreneur. He's also a very popular YouTuber, so chances are many of you guys might know him already. But today we'll be chatting about topics that he hasn't shared before on social media. Specifically, his studying abroad experience at National University of Singapore, and also the ups and downs, the joy and the struggles of being a language trainer here in Vietnam. Okay, without further ado, let's meet Dat Teo. So can you tell me about how you became a teacher? How did you decide to become a teacher, and your life before you returned to Vietnam to make your dreams come true?
You're asking for a speech, right? Like a biography of myself. So I think that stems from my early passion for the English language. My passion for it just got fueled over the years, and subconsciously I wanted to do something that is related to using the language. I actually applied to the University of Education, majoring in English, but
in Singapore or here in Vietnam?
Here. But I also got accepted to RMIT for another course. I decided to go to RMIT.
Oh, so you went to RMIT
So
first.
I pursued a different direction altogether.
Okay, because the major that you applied for at RMIT wasn't teaching. It was something else.
It was
right?
It was design.
It was design.
It was like something
I
completely
remember
different.
It was something else.
So after a year in RMIT, I got accepted into the National University of Singapore, studying communications. And after a year and a half, I decided that it wasn't for me.
Aww.
So then I just took a leap of faith and took the foundation course for linguistics. I just absolutely had a blast and enjoyed so much. So I decided to switch to that major instead. So that's how I came back to being in my element. And I want something that gives me more flexibility in terms of time management and the chance to meet people and use English. And
not
Singapore English is not exactly. So that I came back here and became an IELTS trainer 5 years ago. When I first came back here, I was nobody. No one knew about me.
Aww.
Yeah, and I was late to the game,
No, you're not late.
I was late, and then now I'm catching up real fast. I hope so.
Now you're at are you at the point where you want it in the beginning right now?
I think I can look back and give myself a pat on the back and be sort of proud of my where I am right now. I wouldn't say I'm the hottest or the most famous teacher in the scene, but I get some recognition from people in the field.
Was it a smooth transition for you going from a gifted high school to a national university abroad?
Yeah, at the time I had this misconception of my high school being giving me sufficient preparation for an overseas education. I thought, okay, coming from Trường Đại Nghĩa, I would be so well prepared to be on top of everyone else in my class, in my batch, but I was so wrong.
Was it just English, or is your academic performance, the overall academic performance?
It's a little bit of both.
Did you take an IELTS test before you came to Singapore?
Oh yeah, I took IELTS and I got a 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was high enough, right?
It was among
give you that confidence.
Yeah, it was really high at that time. It was 15 years ago, right? So a 7 was really sought after.
Right.
But then,
or a high schooler.
Yeah, but then when I went to NUS, everyone was already at I think at least an 8. I remember taking part in a class a history course, and I wasn't well equipped with sufficient vocabulary on this topic to get into a debate, and I wasn't courageous enough to speak up. It's the thinking that matters as well. It's not just the language. So it hit home for me that English is just a stepping stone for you. It's just the beginning. It's having a very high score in IELTS. It doesn't guarantee success in college. it's a lot of other things surrounding the learning experience that you have to prepare yourself for.
Were you the only Vietnamese student in class at that time?
I wasn't, but for my major though, I think I was the only Vietnamese student because it's not a very popular major for.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yes, because I was in the same major. I was in the same major in the U.S. and I was the only Vietnamese student, and I was one of the only 2 Asian students. The other one is.
Did you take journalism?
Yes, I studied communication and journalism, and the other Asian student is a guy from Hong Kong.
Did you struggle when you first went to college in terms of communicating in English and arguing in English?
I didn't have as much of an advantage as you did. Like, I didn't go to gifted school. I didn't really study English that much before I came to the US. So for me, it was like a fresh start. So I was super down to earth when it comes to my expectation. Like, I knew that I was nobody, and I knew that I had to start from the beginning. So I took ESL classes.
How long did it take you to feel like you are on par with the local students, or to make you feel confident enough to feel like you're not lagging behind?
Right. I think it took me around half a year. So after half a year of taking ESL, I took my TOEFL test for the very first time, and I scored pretty high. And also, I took the prep class that got me into English 101. So, English 101 is like the stepping stone for all of the language courses at college level. And also, at that time, I realized that there were other native speakers, like native students, who had to take like prerequisite classes for English 101. So like English 097 or like 098.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of that, I had the same experience. Like for all the foreign students who went to NUS, the requirement for not having to take like a preparatory English class is that you have to get an A in IELTS, and very few students got an A when they entered college. Right. So like pretty much everyone from Vietnam had to enroll in that like English for academic purposes.
Right, like prep course, yeah.
And I've realized that it's pretty similar to IELTS, like writing essays.
Would you do it again if you could choose? Would you go to Singapore?
Because it trained me to be so resilient and to be like so tough. I think if it hadn't been for that experience, I wouldn't have had this determination to succeed.
So you've been teaching for about 5 years now, so it's been a while. Do you think that teaching was what you expected in the beginning? Like, the life of being a teacher, the life of being an entrepreneur in the education industry, and, all of the experience, the good and the bad. Was it like what you thought it would be in the beginning?
Well, I had a very simple notion of what teaching would be like when I came back here. I just thought that when you follow a textbook, you'll be fine.
Okay.
And then I've realized that in reality, you have to incorporate all of them into your lesson planning, and you have to anticipate all the things that can go wrong. It took a lot of practice and a lot of trial and error to give quality lessons. I wasn't aware of like how rewarding it could be. You have the power to change a person's worldview and their thinking for the better. I think that's something that I think learning a foreign language can instill in you.
Right. That's why people say that your teachers are like your second parents, right? Because of how much influence they have on you. That's a great thing. I definitely feel the same thing about teaching.
I think a lot of people are in it for the money, right? But it's part of the perks of being an English teacher. But you need to find ways to derive like other types of pleasure as well. And for me, like being able to interact with my students and hear their stories, it just energizes me a lot.
And how about some of the not very good ones, some of the negative ones?
Oh, the negative ones. Well, first of all, the workloads that comes along with it.
That's very true.
That you need to spend like half a day, like 6 hours prepping and like prepping the materials, the games, the activities, the class, and stressing over how you're gonna deliver the best lesson, right? And then afterwards you need to grade the homework.
Right.
It's like you spend almost the whole day. Sometimes the attitude of some students, they
the tough ones.
Yeah?
The tough ones.
Tough ones. Like we as teachers want to help them achieve whatever targets they set.
Right.
But then the lack of motivation or self-discipline, and they expect to get the result without the necessary
putting in the
effort. You need to put in like 200 hours of self-study, including like contact hours with teachers, in order to increase 0.5.
Right.
And then people just come to the class expect to get like a bump of 1 band point within 2 months. Or like 1 month. That is unrealistic. So our job, the hardest thing to do is to convince them, to get them to have the right mindset.
To get into the right mindset, have the right idea, and set the right target before you start. Otherwise, you will be disappointed. Students, especially students in Asia, are always afraid of making mistakes. I feel like from my experience, like a lot of time I have to like encourage them, push them a little bit, telling them that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. It's not, you can learn and you can move on, right? And so I feel like it's also like an invisible pressure for teachers when you're there in front of everyone and everyone's looking at you. You don't allow yourself to make mistakes, like even if small ones. Like, do you feel the same pressure?
Yeah, I know that there's the sentiment, because a lot of my students, they look up to me, right? They think of me as like an inspirational figure for them to look up to. I make mistakes as well, and I do acknowledge that to my students, and I tell them that, okay, I know a lot, but I don't know everything. So I think getting them to know me as a person, an imperfect person, is also important, so that they know that, okay, I'm not like
you're not another god.
I'm not another god. One other struggle that I have is to inspire students to speak up more, because of also the thing that you just mentioned, they're afraid of making mistakes.
They're also afraid of making mistakes.
So we need to get them out of their comfort zone and just mess up.
They always say that the worst mistake is the one that you never made. You never made it and you never learned from it, and that would be your worst mistake, is not to push yourself a little bit harder to learn from your mistake. Is it different going from an independent teacher to a teacher and entrepreneurial, like having your own business? How do you assess your teacher quality?
I know what it's like to be a good user of the language. So that part I can vet teachers who apply to my team. I'll be able to tell whether they meet the standards in terms of English proficiency. But then on the side of the teaching skills, I would require them to give a demo lesson. When they actually deliver the lesson, they can have their own spin on the delivery. So there's some room for like personalization there.
Can you share with us about how you hire a teacher, how you manage them, how you like assess their qualifications and the teaching style? How about quality control? How do you make sure that their quality of teaching is consistent, throughout their course of teaching?
So at first, when we hire them, we need to set certain expectations. These are the things that you need to, the guidelines that you need to follow. But then the way that they execute it may be different from what you expect. So I do need to sit in their classes and observe once in a while, and also have frequent meetings to set the expectations right, to update them on whatever can be improved.
Maybe you can share with us a story, so like a memory, something fun or something unforgettable or maybe something sad? Like, you know, some of the, let's say, highlights in your teaching career.
I feel like I'm answering an IELTS question.
Tell me about something unforgettable in your teaching career. You have 1 minute to prepare and 2 minutes to talk.
I think it was sometime last year, and when I was teaching like a higher level class, we got along very well. Towards the end of it, it was nearing my birthday, and they threw a surprise birthday party for me, and they were telling me, no, you need to stay outside, and I'm like, wow, so they're taking over my property a while. And then when I went inside, I knew what's going on because I had the camera on.
You were so sneaky! Oh my god!
Of course, they didn't know that.
You ruined everything! It's supposed to be a complete surprise!
I feel like we've moved beyond just being teachers and students and becoming friends. So that's the kind of rewarding feeling that I always long for being a teacher. Like
about your students, you know, you love them so much, you know them so well, and you take so much pride in teaching them and developing them. Are there anything that you would love to see your students change?
I would love for them to see the language learning process as an enjoyable one, and for them to actually like live the language and not just studying it.
Are there any specific skills that you hope your students to develop more to improve their language learning?
During my time working in Singapore and also learning there, I've realized that being able to put yourself across effectively, being able to think logically and have like mental bullet points, right? It really does help you communicate better, and you need to be more structured in your thinking because it's gonna help you present better, speak better, and also write better. Those are the skills that are help you go far in life, I think.
Any last words?
Any last words? I salute you because not everyone have the patience to watch until the end. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
So,
okay, I'm getting ready for lunch.
No, we should have this ending. So guys,
what's the ending?
The ending is
close the curtain.
do subscribe to her channel to listen to her awesome accent.
Oh, thank you
I'm
so
jealous
much.
of her accent actually.
And that's the end of our sharing. Thanks you guys so much for watching. If you have any comments or feedback or would like to contribute to our content, please help us do a survey below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Is it working? Okay. Oh my god, COVID-19. Này hai đứa mặt đều sưng mà nói sao vậy?
Sưng à?
Sưng.
Đẹp mà.
Really?